Hi, welcome back to Kiersti's virtual classroom. Today in environmental science, we are talking about biomes of the world. All right, so first and foremost, what is a biome? So a biome is a physical environment that has characteristics of specific plants and animals. So for example, you're probably familiar with what a desert is. So we see lizards and cacti there. It's hot and dry. So it is a particular biome. So it has a particular physical environment in which a particular set of animals and plants can live there. So based on the biome that you're looking at, you're going to see a different temperature and precipitation. So for instance, I just talked about deserts. So deserts have a very high temperature. So here on the x-axis, we have temperature. 0 is here. To the left, we see an increase in temperature, and to the right, we see a decrease in temperature. And then as far as precipitation goes, on the y-axis here, closest to the meeting point with the x-axis is the lowest precipitation. And as you go up this chart, you get into a higher precipitation. So deserts have low precipitation but high temperatures, whereas tundras may have a very low temperature, but they also have a low precipitation. And then tropical rainforests, you're probably more familiar with those, they have a very high precipitation and they're also hot. So they're humid and hot. Okay, so we're going to talk about all of these individually. So the major biomes are tropical rainforests, tropical dry forests, tropical savannas, deserts, temperate grasslands, temperate woodland and shrublands, temperate forests, northwestern coniferous forest, and boreal forests, and tundras. Okay, so each biome is defined by a unique set of abiotic features, a particular climate, and has characteristic ecological community. So it has a very particular set of characteristics, both abiotic and biotic. So here's a look at what the biomes of the world are. So each of these different colors shows you what type of biome you're looking at, and then you can look at the globe to see where you would find those. So for instance, you see a lot of deserts in northern Africa, and you see a lot of boreal forests in northern Europe and Asia, and northern North America, Canada area. And then we see things like rainforests, which is this green, in northern South America. All right, so getting a little closer to home, what do the biomes look like from Fresno to Mount Whitney? If you don't know, Mount Whitney is the highest point in the contiguous United States. So this is basically all of the United States except for Alaska and Hawaii. But Mount Whitney is in the Sierra Nevada, so it's near Yosemite-ish, and it's at 4,416 meters high from sea level. And we're down here at 100 meters. So between 100 meters in elevation to 4,416 meters of elevation, there is a huge amount of growth that can happen as far as a biome and ecosystem is concerned. So down here in Fresno, we see a lot of shrubs in what we call mostly a desert. Fresno is very dry, and we don't get as much rain as we would all hope to get. So that doesn't allow for very many plants to kind of take off. So we see a lot of dry grass, and we see just kind of shrubs here and there. As you go up further into the mountains, you see grasslands, and then you'll get into some oak woodlands, oak forest. So you notice when you go through the foothills, just outside of Fresno, as you're going up to, let's say you're going to Yosemite or you're going to Bass Lake or something, you'll start to notice the change in plant life, right? So when you get into the hills, let's say over by like Table Mountain Casino, Millerton Lake area, you're going to see a lot of grasslands. Once you get up into like Coarse Gold, you're between the woodland, the oak woodland, and the oak forest. Once you get into about Oakhurst, you get into this oak forest where there's a lot more oak trees. And then you get into a significant shift into pine and spruce, which are the higher alpine trees. And then finally, if you get all the way up to Mount Whitney, past all of the big trees, that's when you get into the alpine or the tundra, where there isn't a whole lot of trees left because it's too cold up there and it's too dry. All right, so the first one we're going to look at is a tropical rainforest. So in a tropical rainforest, you're going to see hot and wet year-round. There is thin, nutrient-poor soil, and those are the abiotic factors. All right, as far as plants go, you're going to see broadleaf evergreens, ferns, large woody vines, orchids, and bromeliads. So evergreens are like what you see in the upper left here, and then orchids, for example, are this bottom right flower. The kind of animals you'll see are, as far as predators go, you'll see jaguars, anteaters, monkeys. Herbivores, you're going to see sloths and tapirs, birds, toucans, parrots, parakeets, reptiles. You'll see boa constrictors, anacondas, insects, butterflies, ants, beetles, and fish, you'll see piranhas. So what's interesting in a tropical rainforest is because everything is so wet, so many things can thrive there. So you see a very large, diverse kind of crowd in a tropical rainforest as far as animals are concerned, and plants. All right, where would you find tropical rainforests? Most of them are located in Southern and Central America, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, Southern India, Northeast Australia. Well, you'll notice they're all very close to where the equator is on Earth, which is basically right in the center of the globe, right? So at the 0 mark. So this would be where you're going to get sunlight at a 90-degree angle most of the year. So that sunlight at 90-degree angles is going to allow for much hotter temperatures. So here's a look at what it might look like. So here's a tropical rainforest. As far as temperature and precipitation around year-round, you see pretty consistent temperatures and precipitation. All right, looking at the savanna. As far as abiotic factors, they're generally warm year-round, and they alternate wet and dry seasons. There is rich soils, and it's very easily eroded. As far as plants go, they have tall trees, orchids, like rainforests do, bromeliads, aloes, and succulents. All right, animals are tigers, monkeys, as far as predators go. Herbivores, we see elephants, Indian rhinos, hog deer, birds, we see pelicans, hornbills, and harriers. Reptiles, we see snakes and lizards. And insects, we see termites. All right, where are these guys located? Most of them are in parts of Africa. There are a few in Southern and Central America, Mexico, India, Australia, and tropical islands, but most of the savannas are located in Africa. So a tropical savanna is a little bit warmer temperatures with a little bit more rainfall. So they see warm temperatures, seasonal rainfall. They have more compact soil, and they have frequent fires due to lightning. So the plants that you'll see are tall perennial grasses and drought-tolerant and fire-resistant trees and shrubs. As far as animals are concerned, you're going to see, as far as predators go, lions, leopards, cheetahs, hyenas, jackals, and aardvarks. As far as herbivores go, you'll see elephants, giraffes, antelopes, zebras, baboons. Birds, you'll see eagles, ostrich, storks, and reptiles are none. Insects, more termites. Where are these guys located? Most of them are in Africa, but there are some in southern Brazil and northern Australia. Here's a look at what they might look like with the tall grass. As far as the precipitation and temperature goes, you're going to see very hot summer months, and precipitation is pretty consistent throughout much of the year. All right, deserts. You're probably most familiar with deserts because we live in one in Fresno. As far as abiotic factors go, we have low precipitation. There's variable temperatures, and it can get very, very cold at night, as you probably are aware. The soils are rich in minerals but poor in organic material because there's not a lot of plants. So what plants do you see? Well, you would see cacti, succulents, a creosote bush, or plants with short growth cycles. So most of what you're going to see are these cacti and succulents. Like a lot of people are really familiar with succulents these days because they're kind of all the rage as far as growing plants because they're easy. And the reason they're easy is because they rely on a very small amount of water because they do grow in deserts. All right, as far as animals go, for predators, you might see mountain lions, gray foxes, and bobcats. As far as herbivores go, you'll see mule deer, pronghorn antelope, bighorn sheep, kangaroo rats, and bats. Birds, you'll see owls, hawks, and roadrunners. Reptiles, you'll see tortoises, rattlesnakes, and lizards. Those are probably some of the most common animals thought of when you think of deserts. Insects, we have ants, beetles, butterflies, flies, and wasps. Where are deserts located? They're located pretty much on every continent with the exception of Greenland and Iceland here. But we have Africa, Asia, Middle East, South America, and Australia are the big hitters. And then we do have some in North America. As far as temperatures and precipitation goes, year-round, you see a peak in temperature in the summer months. So it does get much hotter in the summer months than it does in the winter months. And then precipitation is low all year. So I don't recommend going to the Mojave Desert or Death Valley or something like that in the peak summer months. But in March and April, it is absolutely beautiful. All right, temperate grasslands. The abiotic features here we have are warm to hot summers, cold winters, moderate seasonal precipitation, very fertile soil, but occasional fires because of all the grass. So much of what we see here in a temperate grassland are lush grasses and herbs. So you think of, kind of the Great Plains of grasslands. That's what we're looking at here. Animals, we see predators, coyotes, badgers. Herbivores, we see mule deers, pronghorn antelope, rabbits, prairie dogs, and it used to have bison, but in more recent years, we have seen bison kind of move away from grasslands. Birds, we see owls, hawks, bobwhites, prairie chickens, which is what this funny looking guy is up at the upper left-hand corner. Reptiles, we see snakes, and insects, we see grasshoppers and ants. Where are temperate grasslands located? Most of these are in South Asia, Northern America, Australia, Central Europe, and South America. All right, as far as precipitation and temperature goes, we do see seasonal temperature and precipitation go up together. So where we see warmer temperatures, there's also more precipitation. They kind of go hand in hand. Instead of seeing lower temperatures where you see more precipitation, they're kind of the opposite because they're a temperate grassland. All right, temperate forests. The abiotic factors here are cold to moderate winters, warm summers, year-round precipitation, and fertile soils. So the plants that we see here are broadleaf trees, conifers, flowering shrubs, herbs, and most of the ground layer is covered in moss and ferns. So basically, think of an overgrown forest is what we're looking at. As far as animals, predators we see are black bears and bobcats. The herbivores we see are deer, squirrels, raccoons, and skunks. As far as birds, we see songbirds and turkeys. Reptiles, almost none. And insects, we see beetles. All right, where are they located? A lot of these are located in eastern United States and in Europe. There are some in Southeast Canada, Japan, China, and Australia. All right, looking at temperature and precipitation, we do see fairly consistent temperatures year-round, and then our precipitation actually peaks from March to November in a temperate deciduous forest. Temperate conifer forests are a little bit different. They are cone-bearing, and plants reduce water loss by evolving thin needle-like evergreen leaves that with thick wavy coating. So they can survive very harsh winters and extended droughts. And they accomplish this through photosynthesis, even through poor conditions. And fire often plays a role in maintenance, so kind of clearing the way of dead trees. Boreal and taiga forests are northern conifer forests, so they're usually found between 45 and 60 degrees north latitude. This is where you see moist and cool climates with abundant streams and wetlands. And the taiga, the northernmost edge of boreal forests, you have species poor environments. There's harsh climate, which limits productivity and resilience. And they produce large peat bogs. All right, so here's a look at what a boreal forest might look like as far as temperature and precipitation goes. In the May through August months, you see temperature spike just a tiny bit, but precipitation spikes pretty dramatically. All right, looking at conifer forests. This is basically a temperate rainforest where we have the west portion of the coniferous forests of Pacific Northwest, mild temperatures and very abundant precipitation. The canopy condensation is a major form of precipitation. So in temperate rainforests, you're going to see from about March to November is when most of your wet months are. And then you see a drastic drop in temperature in July. All right, looking at a tundra. The abiotic factors here are strong winds, low precipitation, short summers, cold, dark winters, poorly developed soils, and permafrost. Plants here are mostly mosses and lichens, and sometimes this low-lying grass that you see here. So where you would find glaciers is basically where a tundra would be found. So if you think of glaciers, it's also a tundra environment. So the animals you might find here are a migratory waterfowl, shorebirds, musk ox, Arctic foxes, caribou, and small rodents. Where are these located? Mostly North America, Asia, and Europe, very close to the North Pole. All right, looking at precipitation and temperature. Temperatures are pretty consistently near zero year-round. Precipitation does spike in July and August. All right, looking at marine ecosystems, which are a little bit different. Saltwater ecosystems cover vastly more total area and contain much more volume of water than all freshwater bodies combined. Oceans hold a bulk of the world's water. So if you didn't know, the Earth is made up of 70% water and 30% land. And 70% water is 97% of that is all in the ocean. So aquatic ecosystems are influenced by local characteristics of climate, soil, and resident communities, and also by adjacent terrestrial ecosystems. So some critical characteristics we would look at are dissolved substances, suspended matter, so that's the material that's suspended in the water, depth, temperature, flow rate, bottom characteristics, so what's at the bottom of the ocean floor, internal convective currents, and connectivity to other aquatic ecosystems. So here are some facts. Vertical stratification is an important aspect of many aquatic systems. Organisms tend to form distinct vertical subcommunities. So as you have probably seen in some marine ecosystem, maybe videos or photos you've seen, they basically the corals build up vertically instead of kind of spreading out horizontally. All right, as far as light penetration goes, this kind of influences what type of animals or marine life you would see. So at sea level, this is where you get pretty good sunlight. So you're going to see things like tuna. Below 200 meters is where you start to see shrimp, swordfish, hatchet fishes. So sunlight decreases rapidly with depth. Photosynthesis is not possible here. And then past 1,000 meters is where you get into the midnight zone, where sunlight does not penetrate at all. And this zone is bathed in darkness. So we see tripod fish, giant squids, and anglerfish. All right, looking at shallow coasts. This is where we see our coral reefs, which are accumulated calcareous skeletons of colonial organisms, or basically coral. Depth limited by light penetration, and among the most endangered communities. We also see mangrove trees grown in salt water, which is really interesting. And they occur along the calm, shallow tropical coastlines like the Bahamas. All right, looking at tidal environments. These would be like estuaries, bays, or semi-enclosed bodies of brackish water that form where rivers enter the ocean. Okay, so here at the upper left, you see an estuary and salt marsh, and the bottom left, you see a tide pool. So they usually carry rich sediments, and they have a very fan-shaped deposit called a delta, which you're probably a little bit familiar with. And this is on shallow continental shelves where you see the transition between continent and ocean. Then we have barrier islands. These are lone, narrow, sandy islands that form offshore of a coastline. They protect inland shores from surf, so the waves. They're prized for human development, and the loss of vegetation triggers erosion. So the more that we develop on these barrier islands, you're going to see more and more erosion of the coast. Then we have freshwater ecosystems like lakes. So freshwater lakes have distinct vertical zones, and dependent on what vertical zone, just like in the ocean, you're going to see different plant and animal life. So in the thermocline specifically is a distinct temperature transition zone that separates the warm upper layer and the deeper colder layer. So that's a big transition zone between where specific plants and animals can actually live. So looking at light and oxygen levels in freshwater, the thermocline I was just discussing is right here, and it separates the epilimnion from the hypolimnion zones. And most of the plants and animals live in this epilimnion zone where light and oxygen levels are at its highest. All right, looking at wetlands, this is where the land surface is mostly covered in water at least part of the year. So this is like swamps, marshes, bogs, and fens. Bogs and fens are waterlogged soils that tend to accumulate peat, which is basically organic carbon. Water usually is shallow enough to allow for full sunlight penetration, and it traps and filters water and stores runoff. So we have a marsh in this upper right-hand corner, or a swamp in the bottom right-hand corner here. All right, human disturbance is a huge issue though with biomes, because as we grow in population, the more and more we actually disturb each of these biomes. And by some estimates, humans preempt about 40% of net terrestrial primary productivity. Temperate and broad-leaved deciduous forests are most completely human-dominated biome. Tundra and Arctic deserts are the least disturbed, and about half of all original wetlands in the United States have been degraded over the last 250 years. Here's a look at human disturbance by biome, essentially. So the domesticated land is most of where we live, and then here's all the non-domesticated land where biomes kind of remain much more natural and less human disturbed. So breaking down what threats face each biome. So in aquatic, we see dams, redirection of water, pollution, runoff, floods, climate change. Forests, we see deforestation, power generation, agricultural expansion. Tundra, we see climate change, invasive species, pollution. Deserts, excessive evaporation, wildfires, and pollution. Grasslands, we see unsustainable ag practices, disease and pests, pesticides, and global warming. So you'll notice a trend here. Almost every single one is affected by some sort of climate change and pollution, which is all from us. So we need to change tomorrow in order to save all of these guys. And hopefully you learned a little bit of something about biomes today. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.